One study estimated that extreme weather events already cost the United States $95 billion in damage in 2020 alone. So even though the congressional Democrats' new bill addresses some immediate concerns, it's not really looking at the big picture. Because again, all of these problems not only remain, but get exponentially worse until we do the one thing the legislation isn't taking on at all, which is not digging up and then burning so much oil and natural gas all the time, every day, constantly, non-stop. In fact, neither the Senate nor the House version of the bill currently mandates any kind of reduction in fossil fuels, or even provides mechanisms to start doing so. In many instances, it actually extends a lifeline to the polluters and energy companies that created these problems to begin with. And none of this is all that surprising when you consider that fully 1/3 of the senators who authored the bill are part of the infamous Exxon 11. This was the group that ExxonMobil, in its own internal documents, argued were crucial to its Washington lobbying efforts.
Legal declarations show that Senator Manchin has received tens of thousands of dollars from ExxonMobil and its trade associations. Keith McCoy names 10 other senators as crucial to ExxonMobil. Senators Mark Kelly, Chris Coons, Shelley Moore Capito, Kyrsten Sinema, John Tester, Maggie Hassan, John Barrasso, Steve Daines, John Cornyn, and Marco Rubio.
Which helps to explain why the bill, when you start really digging into the details, seems like kind of a big, wet, sloppy, bipartisan energy industry makeout sesh. It actually weakens some critical environmental review processes. One section exempts oil and gas pipelines on federal land from even being subject to environmental assessments. It's right around the part that calls for logging 30 million acres of federal forests and lays out $1.6 trillion in subsidies for the logging industry under the guise of wildfire risk reduction. Hey, who was that guy who wanted to cut down trees in order to stop wildfires?
They also have to do cuts. I mean, people don't like to do cuts, but they have to do cuts in between. So if you do have a fire and it gets away, you'll have a 50-yard cut in between, so it won't be able to catch to the other side. They don't do that. If you go to other countries, you go to Austria, you go to Finland, you go to many different countries, and they don't have fire. I was talking to a head of a major country, and he said, we're a forest nation. We consider ourselves a forest nation. This was in Europe. I said, that's a beautiful term. He said, we have trees that are far more explosive. He meant explosive in terms of fire. But we have trees that are far more explosive than they have in California, and we don't have any problem because we manage our forests. So we have to do that in California too.
Well, I'm sure he knew what he was talking about. I mean, he wouldn't just make stuff up about solving climate change that he didn't even believe in by cutting down trees, even though that's literally the opposite of what you're supposed to do. Not on Infrastructure Week. So yeah, hard to rely on the people who can actually, do stuff to help. Hard to feel like we all need to pitch in when giant polluters have yet to fully own up to their massive, massive part in all of this. When we ask companies to report about their carbon footprint, they include what are known as Scope 1 and Scope 2 emissions. Scope 1 means the carbon they personally put into the atmosphere through their own operations, and Scope 2 refers to indirect emissions from electricity, steam, heat, or cooling that the company purchases. But what doesn't get counted, and what makes up the bulk of most companies' actual real-world emissions, are called Scope 3, emissions from all of the other companies in the main company's value chain. This means that a lot of net zero carbon pledges, the backbone of all claims by responsible corporations who say they are doing their part to solve the climate crisis, are meaningless, as they don't include an average of 65 to 95% of the company's actual emissions. Some companies, including Apple, claim they are already including Scope 3 emissions in their reporting, but we don't currently have good ways to verify this. ExxonMobil also claims to have reported on Scope 3 emissions for the first time in 2021, but notes that its own data is less certain and less consistent, and also called it misleading. I mean, at least they're admitting it. But also, first time in 2021, not even the bare minimum of trying. So, We still don't get accurate data about how much CO2 these dirty-ass companies are actually pumping into the atmosphere. $15 billion goes to supporting dubious carbon capture projects, plus $300 million more goes to additional research on carbon capture technology, over the objections of environmental groups. Carbon capture, by the way, is the idea that you can keep on burning fossil fuels and creating greenhouse gas emissions, but then just store them underground forever instead of releasing them into the atmosphere. Well, why don't we try it, you might ask? That's the thing. We have. The US already has about 4,500 miles of carbon capture pipelines underground, the largest such network in the world, and it's already failing miserably. The only carbon capture coal plant in the entire country shut down in February after requiring so much heat and energy to run that its owners, NRG, had to build, and this is true, a separate natural gas power plant to keep it going. And where do those emissions go? Well, hear me out. We buy a huge balloon, but like really big.
The chemical is then heated to release the gas, producing a stream of pure carbon dioxide that's compressed and sent through a pipeline to a well.
Meanwhile, experts said we need $60 billion to remove lead service lines from our pipes. Then President Biden, who loves to make a deal, you gotta compromise, you gotta art of the deal it, asked Congress for $45 billion to get this done. What's $15 billion when it's just people getting lead poisoning? Then, the Democrats' own bill provides just $15 billion for it. So we're underfunding the fixing of the old pipes by $45 billion, but then spending a big chunk of that money on fancy new carbon pipes we probably can't even generate enough power to use. And it just seems like pretty much all of our solutions remain pipe-based. Which is fine if you're rescuing a princess from King Koopa in the greatest movie of all time, but not so much if you want to keep people alive on the surface of the Earth beyond this century. Consider the Permian Basin. No, you sit there and you consider it! This is the large chunk of the southwestern United States that provides us with 40% of our national supply of oil and natural gas. So as you might imagine, underground, it's crisscrossed by all manner of pipelines. It's also leaking millions of metric tons of invisible and difficult to detect methane gas into our atmosphere every year, and we're not even sure where it's happening or why.
Methane is invisible and odorless, so it's very difficult to detect with the naked eye. But there are technologies that allow people to visualize methane.
Methane just routinely leaks from the ground into the air, and no one does anything about it. But there's no overarching system to even detect and report these leaks. Most of the time, if anyone does it, it's volunteers and non-profit organizations. Fixing this would do more than any other single measure we're talking about to stall climate change. 1/3 of all global warming is based on human-caused methane emissions, and we could do something about this without even cutting consumption. I mean, can we build more pipes on top of those pipes to fix it? I don't know. I'm out of ideas. So even if you can make the case that this legislation is a positive step forward, it's not only too small, but it fundamentally lacks the kind of ambition and vision we need in order to actually make a real impact on this problem. Like so much of the Earth Day rhetoric and climate change action we've seen over the past few decades, it's a lot of upbeat talk and deck chair rearranging, but without the bold and dramatic steps required to fix the one thing we know we need to do, but just don't want to face. Hey, thanks for watching that clip. Here's the evergreen end plate to ask you to like and subscribe. It's any day of the year where you are.